are loading. Hopefully we're live. Hello everyone and welcome. So let me check if I'm live on Facebook. Yes. On LinkedIn, still no confirm on LinkedIn. Am I live on LinkedIn? I want to make sure that I mute myself. Yeah, we are getting more and more people, hopefully. Perfect. Everybody's hearing me. Hello guys and welcome. Today, sorry, I was very distracted at all of that. But today we have quite a special session. And well, as you know, this is the first time I'm doing it, so there's so many issues when this happens first time. But here's the idea. So today I wanted to do a kind of an analysis to a malware to let me arrange with all the chat and all this stuff. Let's have the chat up here. Yes. Perfect. And I see people replying from LinkedIn. Very good. So today I wanted to do something that is a bit different, that I wanted to actually do analyze or do give an insight of an analysis of a malware. So the idea was that I will bring a student who is stuck with a malware, who's analyzing a malware, and he's stuck in understanding what this malware is doing. And then I give my insight on how I would analyze the same sample and how I would tackle the problem that he's facing. So someone is analyzing a sample, he's stuck, maybe one or two or three people in one session or four people, and I give them my insight on how you can analyze this malware. And this is the best way that I can share my knowledge than I do analyze something and I don't know where is the people level is. So it's good to have somebody who is interacting with me. But things doesn't work always as expected. So we had the person who's going. He's really a good guy, but things didn't go. He didn't understand what the session is about, and he wasn't fully prepared. So we will do something a bit different today. Let me first read the chat. I can hear you. Yes. Hello, Amr. Hello, Ismail. Yes, from LinkedIn. Perfect. So awesome to see you. The new book. Thank you, Paul. Yeah. By the way, we have the book has been changed a lot. So I have a copy up here. Anyway, so we have changed lots. We had a comment on Amazon saying that we had lots of kind of mistakes or spelling issues. So especially the spelling ones, and we had lots of this type of typo spelling type of stuff. And we have noticed that when we looked at this, that even the code, the editors have changed the code into making it real word, like let's say move in assembly MOV, he changed it to move with the E at the end, and they created more spaces not necessary and stuff like that, that made the book is a little bit uneasy to read. So we went through, I think we went through maybe over like hundreds of comments and rephrasing sentences and improving different things. We went through a lot of things, and finally we went to them and we have reviewed that. So now it is the correct version. I don't know if the Hacker News had the new version, but Beckett for sure has the new version of the book. And yeah, um, perfect. Hello Emmanuel, تحيا مصر. Okay, very good, me too. Looking forward to this. Perfect. عمرو حافظ. Hello, Amr Hafiz, how are you? Then, yeah, كل سنة وأنت طيب. Thank you very much. So, there's people who are talking about that we want to do a live in Arabic, by the way. I see that happens on YouTube as well. I'm not reading a lot on YouTube. So, we will be doing that at least once or twice to go live in speaking only Arabic. Mostly it will be only on Facebook because I mostly know that my LinkedIn is full of people who don't speak Arabic, so mostly it will be on Facebook only. But I will do that. I didn't forget that. And so today, basically, the session was the main goal was to analyze a real malware with you guys, or at least give my insights. So what I have prepared for today, which was the last minute preparation, that I will take a look at a sample that I have analyzed before or analyzed parts of it. It didn't take much time, maybe like 1-2 hours into this sample. And I will also look at a malware analysis report from a student of mine actually. It's called Mahmoud Nuruddin, and I will be reviewing his report from my point of view. So again, to not miss everything. So basically, what I will be doing, I will take a sample, I will look at it, I will look at, give you insights how I would approach this sample, how I would analyze it, and what is the things that I noticed through the analysis. It will be a short, maybe 10-15 minutes about the sample. Then I will go to another thing, which I will be looking at a malware analysis report by one of my students, and I will look at this analysis and say what is the correct things, how to present the data. Mostly I will focus on the presentation, then I'll focus on how accurate it is. I'll focus on, is it the good representation, what you should do to write your own malware analysis report. Does it make sense to you guys? Tell me in the chat below if that makes sense, or the chat around. Um, what leaning your back that much gives you a well, yeah, maybe after the end of the chat I will have to rest for a while. um, so very good, yes. uh, are you still listening to me on here on YouTube? I see. Very good. So we have few people here, few people there. So let's get started. I know. So I know that you guys, some of you guys are in an advanced level in malware analysis. Some of you guys are more beginners, and that's okay. I know that might look very intimidating when you look at the assembly code, but you don't be afraid of it. And it basically, we will be covering. So when we talk about the analysis of that malware, we are talking about something that is a little bit advanced, and I will try to simplify things as much as I can. But let's say if you are joining our training, this will be after, like, this will be from module 5, for example, out of 12 modules. So you will not be starting with all that code. And if you are reading a book, will be also an advanced step. uh, Very good. I'm excited, very excited to see demo, sir. Perfect. So let's get into the real thing. Let me change the screen, and here you go. So tell me, guys, if you can see. Let me put my face up there. Let me know, guys, if you can see the code. Did you see my screen? Hopefully you see it by now. I don't see people active on YouTube. Are you listening to me in YouTube, guys? Do you hear me? Please let me know in the chat. Hello, Thabit. Hello, Kumar. So, do you guys see my screen? Let me just confirm first that everybody is seeing my screen. Yes, work is working. Is anybody in YouTube? Zoom in more. Let me zoom in more. Do you guys see the words that's written there? Do you see the words, or it's too... let me see if I can change the fonts. Where do people change fonts? Options, fonts. Let's make it... This would work. Oh yeah, that's too big to be able to actually say what is happening around here. Do you guys see the font? Do you see what's written there? Can we talk about unbacking? Sure, I can. YouTube is also working. The sample, please. Can you talk about unbacking? Yes, we see it clear. Very good. So let me first cover the unbacking part. Um, oh, YouTube started to zoom in more. Yeah, bro, hear you on YouTube. Yes, 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 yes. Very good, very good. The people on YouTube are awake and they are seeing me. Very good. So, um, let's start the conversation. So, about unbacking, there is so many different techniques that you can unback the malware. The first thing is that you need to know if this malware is backed or not. There is different characteristics to find out. The first thing is using a signature, which you want BID or CFF Explorer, or I think B Studio as well. These tools, they have signatures to detect backed malware. Basically, let's say for UBX, for example, which is a very known backer, uh, they rename sections with the UBX, and you see UBX is written everywhere, so you know that this is a UBX, the UBX packed, and as well the beginning of the code of the UBX looks exactly the same. It's the same stop. So a little bit back. So what's happening when a malware is packed? What happens is that the whole code of the application is all being compressed into specific parts, and there's a small code that's being added to the program at the beginning of it, and this code, its main goal is to unback all the backed part. So this code that unbacks the whole program, basically decompress the program, this part is mostly is like a copy paste. It's with UBX case, for example, which is a very known backer. It's the same code every single time, exactly the same code. The only difference is the size of the code he wants to decrypt, the configuration, some stuff, and how he will run the application after. But it's exactly the same stop at the beginning. So if this stop is the same, they can write a signature to detect that, which is what BEAD is doing, what B Explorer, B Studio, sorry, B Explorer also is a known tool, but it's a paid commercial tool. There's also the CFF Explorer by FireEye. So this is the tools to detect. So what if these tools didn't find a specific signature? They didn't know if it's backed or not. So there's other ways to know. One of the things is to one of the things is to look at the names of the sections, because some sections could be renamed into .aspac, for example, or .ubx or something else. Where is the entry point? Mostly the entry point should be, or the where the program starts, or the code starts. There's in every application there's multiple sections: section for code, section for data, section for resources like icons and stuff. It's like every program is divided into sections, and every section has its own job. And usually the first section is the code, the second is the data, and the later on you have, like, almost in the last section, or the previous before the last section, is mostly the resources, which is the icon, the information about the author and stuff, and the version and so on. So um, if the code is like the start of the code is basically in the last section, or the last section sounds to be executable, that is a red flag that it is encrypted application, or it is backed application. So there's multiple ways to detect. Then it comes the unpacking part, and there's so many different ways. Maybe today I will not cover all the ways, or not cover, I'll not be covering them, because there's multiple, so many different ways. But in the book we have like 10 different techniques we covered in the training, in the book, and in our training we cover four of them in details, four or five at least, in details, step by step. But in the book you have also all the details. So so basically, can you talk about unbacking? We talked about it here. Um, can you increase the resolution watching? Oh, is the resolution is bad? I think I have a problem with the resolution here with the, hmm, I don't know if I can change the resolution now. Um, Is the resolution is bad, guys? Do you see me clearly? I think it's quite okay on Facebook. So um, everything sounds fine. So let's get started with. Very good. It's clear. Perfect. So let's get started with this malware. So this malware is called Contobi, and the story of that malware that this malware, if I remember the story correctly, so this malware is basically a malware that is being used by North Korea. So there was a story where North Korea was attacking Sony and stole some data out of Sony, and was a big story. Then we saw another attack on the Bangladesh bank, and we didn't know what this attack is from, but there is criminals who are stealing money out of Bangladesh bank. And through different samples, we found that there is one sample that looked very, very similar to another sample that is in the Sony attack. So we knew that on Sony attack that there was North Korea was behind Sony attack because of different attributions. Then we saw the Bangladesh attack, and then we saw, okay, this looks like maybe there is a bit of similarity. And I actually was working on this task on semantic, and I was trying to find the link between this attack on Bangladesh Bank and the attack that we saw on Sony. And we found that there's one sample that looked very similar to another sample on the other end. And we kind of found a correlation between them. You can find that actually publicly on reports with the exact malware. I think was Banswift and Contobi that had very close similarities. And this was the Contobi malware. Uh, I think someone has internet problem. Probably not bad. Continue. Very good. So, so basically, this malware was actually written. Well, the attribution says it's North Korea. We will keep it until there. We don't point fingers to someone. And so basically, let me share with you. So this sample it's actually not a complex sample. It has around 230 functions, 229 if you see up here, 229 samples. Um, and this sample is basically, so it is not a small sample. And what I will talk about now is how I would approach this sample. So of course I wouldn't start directly with the first thing is to look at it in IDA. From my experience right now, I might take a sample, put it in IDA because I would know what to expect, or I would kind of give me an idea of, okay, this 230 functions, I can understand probably some things out here and there. But if you are starting in malware analysis, you don't start by the static analysis or the dynamic analysis. You don't look at the code at the beginning. And the reason for that, it might take you so long time to understand what's happening in that malware. And maybe after a long time, you discover that, oh, that's not actually a malware, or basically it's just a downloader and it downloads something from this link, and all the samples actually in that downloaded link. So you can start by two things. The first is the static analysis. It's basic static analysis, which is looking at the BE characteristics, the characteristics of this file, the sections, the imported functions. Every application, so basically every application uses some Windows commands to do everything they want. If they want to open file, they want to delete file, they want to connect to the internet, they want to change the registry, wants to open an application, wants to terminate an application. Whatever they want to do, they can do any application. They can do all of these things without by themselves. They need the Windows to do all of these things for them. So what happens is that every application on Windows, at least we are using Mac, but every application on Windows, they do use Windows commands to do everything. So if they want to open a file, there's a Windows command called open file. If they want to create a file, there's a Windows command called create file. These Windows commands, they are called APIs, API, and these APIs or these Windows commands basically does everything for you. And if you for normal applications, if they want some commands to use, which included in some libraries, some system libraries, they do say in their header, in the file characteristics, there is a list of all the needed commands, all the commands they need to run to use in their application. So if they want to open files, they will write all the open file, create file, delete file, write file, read file. All of these commands will be written in their configuration list or in their, let's say, what's called the BE header, which is the executable header or the information about this application. So with these commands, let's say this is kind of the list of commands, right? You have let me try to find let me try to find something that is interesting. So get local time gets the file, get the time, move file, which is moving a file basically, create a process, which is running an application, write file, create file. All of these commands, I don't know if you see it very well, but they are, all these commands are basically being written inside the application and being said that, oh, this application wants to use these commands. Of course, not with a malware, not all the applications he tries to show in their characteristics early on, but some of them, they show all of their commands, or at least many of them, like how you see up here. You can see, okay, I know that he is creating a file, he is writing a file, he's probably get startup info, that's just getting some information. Let's say read files, who's trying to read a file, move files, who's trying to move files. So I can know some of the functionality out of the characteristics. So I can start analyzing the malware by looking at the characteristics of the file. What are the commands he's trying to use? What are the strings, the text inside the application? I can go here and look at all the strings that are included inside the file, and you would be surprised to see there's so many information sometimes included in the malware from just looking at the strings. This sample, for example, when you look at the strings, you will notice these things: get basic info, 15, 16, 17, from 1 to 17. Then you have get adapter info. This is Authn EX client. Auth is basically mostly authentication. EX is mostly extra or extended, and then client, and then connect to beer. And here looks like receive line failed, send buffer failed, success, receive line. So it looks like it's error messages I can see here. So here that can tell me a lot about the codes of the application. Just looking, this is basically the strings, the text inside the application. You can see them with a text editor with running strings on the application. There is a command in Linux called strings and then space, and you give it the name of the file, and it gives you all the strings inside. And this is some information that you can see. Connect to beer, and then he say get HTTP response code failed. Connect to beer, receive line failed. So you know that, oh, possibly these strings are being used inside the application. Maybe an error messages are being sent to the attacker that can give me some information about the what the application is doing. So you can see here all of this text inside. You can see here load configuration, load CFG, before wake up, before can connect, thread main, which is the main start for the application, before crypt, before crypt, dick is basically means decryption. So all of these things. So at the beginning, you can understand so much about the application just by looking at the strings. You can see what the application might be doing, or what the malware might be doing, what are all the imported functions. Also, you can see the important functions because all of these are text. You can see all of them up here, all the names of the commands, the same things that we have seen. You can also see some things that weren't included inside the imports. For example, like if we go down here, you see, for example, delete file. We didn't see delete file early on in the imported functions. You see copy file, create directory. If you go here, it's a, see all this reg means registry. So registry open key, registry create key. You see here, for example, socket, accept, send, receive. All of this are listen. Um, all of this related to internet, connect, for example. All of these commands are related to the internet. So you can find lots of information, and this is could be your start when you do a malware analysis. That I will look at the basic strings, the basic information about this file. Is it backed or not? What are the commands being used? What are the strings that I can see inside the code, especially after I unpack the malware if it's backed? What the information I can gather, and what can that lead me to understand what possibly this application is doing. Sometimes you might be lucky and you can see the whole malware URL, for example, just from the strings, where it tries to connect to find the attacker. Um, so this is the first step. The second step is basically running the malware in a sandbox and trying to understand uh, and trying to see what it's trying to do in this sandbox. Let's say it tries to create a specific file, save specific information, maybe drops another malware and run it. Maybe that's the only behavior it does. So that's enough information to go and analyze the next step. Maybe maybe it does nothing and it detects it's a sandbox. So you need to understand what is happening, what it tries to do. Probably you will be lucky and you will get most of the information you need to know just by running the sample and monitoring it from far away. Maybe the sandbox can help you. Or basically running it in a virtual machine, try to act as a real user and see how the malware reacts to you. It used to be in the past that malware were detecting VMware and detecting virtual machines, but now it's a little bit less than before because now it's um, basically there's so many servers and so many machines that actually running inside the VM, so many hypervisors and stuff like that, that makes lots of malware don't want to miss these opportunities. So they still infect and still run normally in a virtual machine. Not all of them, of course, but the majority now. So it's also a good way to monitor the application. If all of this, like using these two steps, you can start to get into understanding the code. So you do not start by looking at the code and go into the assembly language and go to any function and try to understand what's happening up here. This may be too early. You need to start first by the strings, by the commands that are being used, to see if it's backed or not, and unback it, or if it's encrypted and try to decrypt it. Get as much information around the malware and understand what it's doing. And if there is something unclear and there's more questions you need to answer, then try to dig into the code. Or if there's some information that you want to confirm, then it's the time to dig into the code. Doesn't make any sense. I see that the chat has stopped, so I don't know if you guys are still listening to me. Um, I think I'm still live. There's nobody almost on LinkedIn. Are you guys hearing me? Um, are you guys hearing me? Hello? Is anybody active actually? Because I think there's nobody's listening. Okay. Very good. So does it make sense what I'm saying so far about looking at the strings and looking at the malware? Does it make sense for you guys? Let me know in the chat. The sound is so low. Do you guys hear me? Very good. On LinkedIn, things are okay. Does it make sense? So, does it make sense what I was saying about looking at the strings, looking at the imports, and then analyzing and then get into the code? Uh, Does it make sense? Great information. As all organizations are using EDR tools, do basic static malware analysis still helps in real scenarios? Very good question. So we have here a good question that says, in the older organization when using EDR tools, those basic static malware analysis still help in real time scenario? Yes, because of multiple things. So um, basically, EDR tools is it's good to give you some insights of there's something malicious could be happening. But there's multiple things you might not be able to see. First is that the malware might have noticed that you might have detected it, or they are delaying the execution of real activities. Maybe didn't receive a specific command from the attacker, didn't know, the attacker didn't decide to make it run right now. So that's why they didn't do something that is so suspicious, for example. But with basic static analysis, you might see in the string some information, might be some information that shows other things you might didn't know about this malware. Let's say here you can see some of the commands or some of the functions probably. So this is basically maybe name of some functions inside the code, get adapter info. After TCP copy, connect to peer. So maybe he's connecting to, is doing peer-to-peer communication, probably connect to this specific, like connect and then a specific HTTP request, proxy, so maybe it passes proxy. Um, so some things you might not know about the functionality without actually analyzing the malware. It might not didn't run yet, but you don't have the complete information. And as well, ADRs cannot really see everything the malware is doing, and and it needs sometimes that you need to do some real analysis if you want to know what's the real IOCs, if there is any traces for the malware that still not hasn't been detected by the ADR that you need to look at or you need to remove if you want to clean the system. So with these things, you might need the actual analysis. In general, for a complete malware analysis, it might also be needed to understand what exactly the malware author or the attacker is doing using this malware, what commands he has been sending, what passwords he has been collecting, what exactly he's being and what information he has been exfiltrating. So all of this information you might be able to find through analyzing the malware, understanding the communication that has been happened, and the files have been collected and so on, and you'll be able to know what's exactly this malware has been doing, what the compromised accounts, if there's lateral movements have been happening. You might to know all of these things not only through the logs but through deeper analysis on the malware. Can Ghidra be also used to achieve what we intend to achieve with IDA? With mostly yes, both are good. This is I'm using IDA free, so with IDA free or Ghidra both are okay. Um, I think so the only benefit that IDA has is the ability to debug. Ghidra doesn't have the ability to debug. But apart from this, I think both are okay. They can do the same thing. Completely makes sense, thanks. But it's not possible to analyze all the application. Which approach should be followed to begin? The first thing is when you see something suspicious on a machine, assuming that you already found something suspicious and you know this machine is being compromised. You have seen some activities on the logs, you have seen some stuff. Of course, you have the system internal logins or the event logs. So you know there's something, or the ATR, so you know there's something bad in this machine. The first step will be to go into this machine and to basically look at the memory dump, collect the memory information, separate this machine, contain, maybe you don't want to separate the machine early, you want the attacker to continue, but monitor what the attacker is doing, or you want to contain the attack very fast, so you separate it out from the whole network. But regardless of the way, the investigation, you will collect the memory dump and you will try to analyze the memory dump, trying to find what is malicious inside this, what's the process that looks suspicious or has, let's say, process injections, some PowerShell commands have been running, some sessions or some process started to run that should not be running. Let's say Word.exe is running PowerShell. That's something doesn't make any sense. Why Word.exe or Excel.exe will execute a PowerShell command, or a remote account, a remote attacker, or a remote account has been accessing this machine and has been running specific applications, or basically having a process running. So you know what is the things that are the most suspicious, what are the activities. And maybe all the applications looks legitimate, but there is some of them have some injection, some process injection. And the volatility can help, and redline can help to identify these suspicious artifacts. And once you understand that these are the malicious or the malicious activities inside the machine, these are the processes that you should analyze. Then you start to dig into these applications. You might already have an image dump from the whole hard disk or parts of it, and you get this sample and you do analyze this sample with more in details. So this is basically where you will start to look into the specific malware. So the malware analysis comes in the investigation. It's kind of the last step, which is you have the memory forensics, you have the digital forensics, and then you have the malware analysis. And for all the people, these steps are all important to understand what the malware, what, like, answer specific questions about the attack, like how they communicate with the attacker. Maybe they communicate with the attacker through Pastebin, or through Dropbox, or through YouTube comments, or through Twitter. So these things might not be seen by the ADR. You might not notice through the network, but this, when you do analyze the malware, you start to see that things. You might be able to find that they generate domains. So you start to know how they generate the domains and what's their algorithm, and you're able to either sinkhole, or you can block the domains every single day the new domains have been created. And sinkhole as well to know what are the infected machines on your network. This could be different things. So you will have some questions in the malware analysis that you need to answer through your malware analysis report, and this is basically the last step. Does it make sense so far? Cutter can debug too now. Very good. I didn't use Cutter, to be honest, so far, but probably it's a good tool. Um, so let's get into the YouTube. So let me read all. So the volume is good, very good. On the next release, Ghidra should be able to debug executable too. Very good. I didn't know that. That's really great. But can't we use an external debugger? Are not we using x64 debugger only? Um, yeah, you can use other debuggers. I mostly use Oli debugger or x64 debugger, to be honest. But just was something that I didn't like about Ghidra. But I think Ghidra will be a really good option compared to IDEPRO. Yes, but why would you use two different programs when you can use only one that does more features? There is a good question here and good debate. Why you would use multiple tools if you have one tool like IDEPRO that can do everything? And I see this debate actually in so many different products. And the truth is, sometimes this one tool is good in one thing, but they are not really, they are mediocre in other things. And if you use multiple tools, all of them are really great in what they are doing. Like, let's say x64 debugger or WinDebugger are really good in debugging. IDEPRO is really good in static analysis. So you might have multiple tools, but everyone is excellent in what it's doing, and that's compared to the other things. Um, Very good. So So great information. All the organization are using ADR tools do basic static analysis. I think I replied to that if I'm not mistaken. Uh, do basic static malware analysis still help in real-time scenarios? I believe they do because there's so many things ADR can catch. One of the cases that domain generation algorithm, malware that generates domain every day, how you would know the next domain without the ADR, or like how you would know without waiting for it next day. You need to analyze the malware to know. Some malware that connects to Twitter, for example, which happened I think in Cozy Bear, which is one of the malware, and they used to connect to Twitter and get the list of domains that it will use to connect to reach the attacker. You wouldn't know about that. You wouldn't know what are the next domains until you go to the Twitter account. Some of them, some malware, they get the commands directly from Twitter or from YouTube comments or from Pastebin or they exfiltrate data to Dropbox. And you will look at this all of this data and you think that's normal. You wouldn't notice that these data are actually from the malware. Here's malware analysis is really important. Basic static analysis might help you. You will see Dropbox is written inside the code. You might see the username and password. You might be lucky, you might be not, and you will have to analyze the malware. So this is also a good thing. You might run the malware, do behavior analysis, running the malware and see what it connects to, and suddenly you see it connects to Twitter or connects to specific YouTube video or connects to Dropbox or connects to Pastebin, and then you will understand what this malware is doing. So ADR can't really detect everything, unfortunately. It detects what looks suspicious, but not everything the malware is doing, which is some of them are being very disguised as being completely normal activity. Hopefully that makes sense. So, um, so back to this malware. So what we said at the beginning is that we had the malware, we looked at the import table, we looked at the strings, we run the malware to see the behavior that is doing. What is the next step? Now I'm looking at the code. What is the next step? Mostly you will use some of the strings or some of the commands that you have seen. So you go to the commands and see all the commands you have seen and you try to understand what these commands, where these commands are being used. So you don't need to analyze the whole malware. You might just want to see what is exactly is happening for this command. So let's say there is a move file. What is the file is being moved? If I double click here, okay, I'm using IDA Pro. I know that could be difficult for you to understand everything, but here I go to jump to the X references, see where it's being used in the code, and I see it's being used actually two times, or basically one time, which is here. Here he tries to move a file. So here I see that it tries to delete a file and then it tries to move a file. And here's move a file again. So I can go through this code and try to understand, okay, what is this code is trying to do? I see it's trying to generate some random numbers and doing some stuff. What this function is being doing? Then I can go and find, okay, where this one is being used, where this command, this function is being used. So I go a little bit one step deeper and then I see it's being used up here. I see that here is like the function that's used, the move command. I already renamed everything, but I can see he's doing like find next file, find first file. So it looks like he's trying to search for files. So basically maybe it tries to move a lots of amount of files. Maybe it's a massive exfiltration. I don't know. Then I go here and see that it's being used up here, and then there's something else. It looks like there's some code is using multiple things, and here's like command header dot type. I see here a string that's being used and saying command header dot type, process command header dot type. What does that mean? And then process crypt decrypt, process receive, process. So I don't really know. Then I start to dig into the code. This is one way. So I go to the imports, look at one of the functions, let's say a read file or move file or whatever, or write file, create file, whatever. Then I dig deeper to see what's being used for. And I pivot from this commands and I start to look at the things where this function is being used, only that I understand all the code around this. and go from there to start analyzing the malware. Because when you look here, there's like 230 functions. What all of this malware is doing, I don't know. And so I can start to pivot through some functions that looks interesting. Might be also I will try to pivot through strings. So let's say I go here and see connect beer. What is this connect to beer? Let's try to see where this string, this is the text, find the references, find where it is being used. And I see, oh, it's being used up here. So here he's trying to print this message. And looks like here he's printing different messages depends on different occasions where that's being happened. So I see all of these messages up here, and I see that he's trying to receive something, and then if maybe he didn't receive it, so it looks like he's getting here some HTTP response, and with that he's saying, oh, receive lines failed, or success, or send or receive. So it looks like, because here I know that it's using HTTP, so it looks like it's being using an HTTP code up here, and he's trying to receive something. I go up and I see that he's sending some data, and here he's trying to connect. So this is, if you see that this text is basically, this is an HTTP command, like connect, then here like maybe an IP and port, or a URL and port, or domain or port, and then HTTP, and it's HTTP1, it's not HTTP 1.1, which is maybe old, I think, and then the host, and this is the host, and then it looks like, or here he's trying to use with proxy, so it looks like he's trying to send kind of an HTTP request, and this is how it looks like. And then he's trying to send this request, and then he's trying to receive something, and he say that, oh, he received or he didn't receive. So this is good information about how he does communicate, probably how he communicate to another peer inside the network, or connecting to the attacker. So this is basically a kind of a way to pivot through the strings and go from one string and try to find what this string could be the reason for it, where it's being used. I see here the connect, for example, and then I go and say, okay, let's see the connect with proxy. So I see here he's trying to use this connection, and then he's using this or that, looks like, and then he's trying to receive something. So with that, I start to understand what possibly this malware is, how it tries to connect the attacker. So this is one way you can pivot through, let's say through strings, or you can pivot through import through the Windows commands it's trying to use, which is create file, delete file, stuff like that, and see who is being used in the code. I know that it might looks very intimidating, but if you look at all of this, you see send message, receive, print, text, get HTTP response. Okay, this is, I renamed it myself. Then you go up there and you see connect and all of this HTTP request. You already have understood some type of information already. And with a little bit of understanding how the assembly looks like, you might able to understand this code pretty easily. Some cases it might be just, scrolling down through the code and understanding what it tries to do. So I will not go so deep into that. I will say that's enough for this malware. But do you have question, guys, about what I'm saying so far? Let me read. Okay. Yes, but why would you use two different programs? On average, how much time should an analyst spend on his static analysis? Should he look for the malware functionalities or reverse every line of code to have an in-depth view of the malware? So, very good question. So, basically, it depends on the task. But what happens in many cases that you as a malware analyst, your job is to answer specific questions about this malware. These questions haven't been able to be answered from the memory forensics, from digital forensics, from log analysis, from ADR, from all of these tools or all of this source of information. These questions might be what data is trying to exfiltrate, what functionality it provides to the attacker, what abilities it provides to the attacker, how it communicates to the attacker. If there is other malicious domains it tries to connect to, maybe we block one domain that we see in the logs. Let's say it tries to connect to malware.com, and we block malware.com, and then the malware is already having other backup domains it tries to connect to. Maybe if he didn't see the malware.com, he will go to attacker.com or suspicious URL.com, and you wouldn't notice them because you thought that you blocked the malware, but actually you blocked only one domain of multiple domains. So mostly when you analyze a malware, you are answering specific questions, and these questions are related to the case, to the incident you're working on. So do you need to do a full analysis? Mostly not. In majority of the cases, not. For when I used to work in semantic, yes, because we are a company who's providing analysis for malware, and there's and not all cases I was analyzing them for malware, just few cases. Some cases I just analyze a section of it and or just get a brief information about it. So it depends on the case. But the malware analysis can take you from half an hour to 3 weeks, for example, right? That is like the average. Um, it depends on how in-depth you want. We used to provide like a very detailed report, some like specific premium reports uh, for uh, for a client, and these reports were very detailed. We really understand every single aspect of the malware, and that might take took from us like 3 weeks, sometimes even more in some big obfuscated cases. But that is kind of the time frame that we had, 3 weeks. For sometimes some malware just want to understand what's trying to do, what's this tool, what tries to do. Maybe it's just a mimicat, so say, oh, this is actually mimikatz, and that's it. And this maybe take me 10 minutes. Maybe I try to understand exactly what the malware is doing, or more information that could take me 2 hours, 3 hours, or a full day, for example. When you do incident response, you do you do a lot of investigation and deep investigations to understand how things will work. Sometimes you do the containment before the finishing of the investigation. Sometimes you try to control the attacker and make him don't feel that he's being attacked until you understand the whole scope of the attack and able to kick him out from all the network at once before he comes back in a different way, tries to hide his tracks, or decide to wipe all of your machines or run around somewhere if he starts to feel that you have detected his presence. So it depends on the case, but malware analysis, in just malware analysis, the main goal is to answer specific questions and as well uh, to um, to maybe takes from half an hour to few days to maybe 3 weeks in big cases, which is very few cases. So very good. There are EDR and EV bypasses published all the time too. That's true. So that's actually really true that there's so many things that bypass the EDR, bypass the antivirus. So you don't need to rely on tools most of the time. And this is really an important topic, which I want to probably I will finish with it. Uh, that malware that actually, as you're an engineer, you are a security engineer, you need to understand that tools cannot be your knowledge. Like you can be, your expertise is how to use a tool or relying on tool. You need to understand that these tools are being developed all the time. They are not 100% accurate, and your job is to question how they do and to understand how they work. What's the way they do their work, how you can do that work probably manually, or understand at least the methodology behind it, and you can do your manual investigation if it's needed to, and as well to understand, to question their output all the time, because you might see an EDR telling you or antivirus telling you everything is fine, and then you discover that you have been already compromised from, I don't know, few months, from 3 4 months ago. You are still compromised until now, but the antivirus said everything is fine. So you need to be able to question that, and it's very important to understand that to really grow as a security analyst, you need to understand that you will never grow by learning more of tools, by mastering tools. You will never grow as a super user of different systems or tools. If you are good in administration only, or if you are good in managing some tools, running some tools, executing tools, looking at the logs of some tools, you will not you will have just a limited successes. But once you go beyond that, understand how these tools work, what is the concepts and the knowledge behind these tools, and how I can do the investigations myself, how I can actually detect suspicious artifacts, and how I can do all of this by myself without mainly relying on tools to tell me what's happening, and start to question them and start to understand the general knowledge behind all of these tools. This is when you grow as an engineer. This is where you grow your expertise and you start to get real job. Just read the last comments. So I spend my time to understand every line of code, and it's very hard for me to analyze every line until I hate this field. But now I understand. Very good. So I hope that gives you some information, Mazen. So basically, it's not really that you need to understand every single line. And you need to understand what you need to skip, because sometimes, like this malware, I didn't understand every single function. Maybe these things are not really important. Like this is just runs WSA startup, which is do some initialization. This is doing a cleanup. Some things that I don't really need to understand every single thing. I can just look at that and say, oh, it's calling the base startup, and it looks like it's not doing much around. So it's like very few code and calling WS startup, and that's all of it. So I can just assume that this is will be, you know, let's say I will call it socket, which is WSA is like an initializing network or internet or sockets, and I will say unit, for example. This is okay. That's the whole thing. I don't need to look into all the details. I don't need to say, oh, let's move this byte here, then this subtract, and then test. And no, I don't need to read all the code. I just need to look at the most important. And then again, code malware analysis is a little bit like log analysis. You look at specific evidences in a pile of code. So you look at here, oh, this command looks very suspicious. When I go here, let's say I go to this code, for example, I just scroll through and I see, oh, here's looks like, oh, what's this, and double dots and something, P64 maybe. Then I see connect. Oh, this looks like it tries to connect the internet. And then I scroll and I see connect again. So it looks like there's two different ways to connect probably. And then send buffer, then receive, then saying that he received that text, and he gets the response, then he compares it with something, then he print either he received the line or he didn't, or he didn't receive or he did, and then or he didn't able to send, for example. So I understood the whole code without actually reading the assembly, just looking at the different functions, and that you get through experience. And that's what we try to do in our training, is that we try to give you the experience, not only the knowledge, because there's so many different trainings in malware. And the problem that I see is that they give you the knowledge. This is all the malware activities. This is the how process injection look like. This is that. But with malware, you need to really look a lot at the code by yourself. You need to be able to scroll through a code like this one and understand it in just a few minutes. This you will gain through experience. And that's what we try to do when we do the training. So we do analyze tons of different samples. Something like this one, um, this is a really known malware that's used against that's used basically in something in with North Korean. It's a nation state attack. It's actually not very complex malware, but it's a nation state malware, and as well it is a real experience, real sample. And we try to collect as many samples, and we do analyze them inside the training, either in the video training or in the workbook. And we try through that to give you this experience, to make you practice more and more and more and more, and focus on learning through practice and simplify all the knowledge. Put myself in your shoes. So I try to tell you, okay, this is, I see here this receive line, and then here there's a test, and there's that. I try to look from your shoes, and we take you through step by step to gain that experience through the training. So, and we do provide it with mentoring as well, so you can basically share your screen, and I do analyze your malware, and do look at the problem that you're facing, and I do help you directly, like how I'm doing today, or how I should be doing today if everything went well. Um, So I recommend you to look at our training. It's really, really a great training, and it's not I don't endorse it just because I'm the one who created, but it's really, really, really in depth and really lots of real samples that we do analyze together, and lots of different labs. So that's all of it about the sample. Any question about that so far? Um, so here, I see here's lots of conversation has been happening on okay, on YouTube. So the sample, I need the sample too. No, Mahmoud, I will not give you the sample. You are a black hat. White hat, don't worry. No, what I know about Mahmoud Nuruddin, he is a white hat. Also, something I noted from your life, why don't you use the decompiled C-ish version of the code instead of looking at the assembly? You can understand better from the assembly code. Um, I um, and then I would be lost without the sweet decompiler. Okay, not everyone has the decompiler. I think there's a decompiler can give you the right code from this. Okay, talking about the decompiler. First, I'm using IDA free, which doesn't have the decompiler, and it doesn't mean that I don't have the IDA Pro, but when we do cover in the training, we do cover the free tools. With Ghidra, there is a decompiler. It's not the best, but there is a decompiler. And the thing here is that it is a preference at the end of the day. But when you look at C code, that is lots of ifs and lots of things, when you look at an algorithm, basically, it will be very, very complex to understand how all of these ifs and what's all of this variable. And then if you rename the variable like var1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and all of these ifs inside each other and things that leads to something, and it gets way complex actually. It's really, really not easy to look uh, at a C code when things are getting complex. The good thing about assembly that it's always in one line. There's no nested things like C. It doesn't mean that C code is bad to read, but when it gets really, really complex with C-ish, how they decompile stuff, it can get really, really hard to read. So I don't really rely so much on C decode, on the decode in C. But Ghidra actually is doing really well by having the C code up here and the assembly code here, and you can look at both and basically understand both. So so that's basically a good thing. Um, yeah, and the main thing when we started the training, there was no Ghidra. We do cover Ghidra. I do cover Ghidra in a YouTube video, so that's all about it. For the sample, I will not be sharing the sample, unfortunately, but we do share the full analysis and the sample and everything in our training. I just wanted to give you guys like a kind of a view of how an analysis could look like, how I think about it, what this malware can look like. So, and you can actually find so I will basically put the screen on the MD5. So you can basically take that MD5 and look at it. I think it's in virus total. You can get the sample very easily. I will keep it the screen here for now, so you can get the MD5 and look at it. But the analysis will be only for the students. Um, Today as well, I wanted to. So, any questions so far about that? Does it make sense? The decompiler is better, not better. Okay, I see here the debate about the decompiler, and there's the thing, right? It's all your preference. Like, let's say I like to look at the code this way. Some people like to look at the code that way. I don't like this way. I think sometimes it gets really complex, especially. I don't know if there's something can show me the way it works, especially when there's like lots of blocks and you don't know which block is, like here for example, which block actually runs first, or which block is written before which block, and that can give you some more information about what's actually happening. So I don't like this style. I get way confused. So I like to have it this way. This is my preference, right? Not everyone has the same preference, but this is my preference. And I find that is way easier because I can just scroll down and look at the strings and the code without having to deal with all these boxes. So you see here, okay, software description BIOS, and here's the system manufacturer and system product name. So it looks like this code is trying to get some information about the system manufacturer and system product name. Very simple, right? And I did that analysis without even looking at the code at all, just looking at these strings, just looking at the strings up here and looking at the function, and they see that there's no like lots of things happening. It looks like this is just opening the key, this is querying the key and closing, querying a value from the registry, so all registry commands, and there's nothing else looks like happening. So it looks like just doing that. Very simple analysis. So I like to use this technique, use this style, which is the kind of a text mode. Some people like graph, some people like compiler. It's your own choice. Any question? Um, any question, guys, on Facebook, um, on LinkedIn? Anybody's? Yeah, I see people on here and there. So any question, guys, so far? So what we have done today, we have talked about how I approach a sample from the unbacking part. You can watch you can rewatch everything, but we talked about how we can detect backed malware, how we can there's multiple techniques to unpack it. We didn't cover it today. Maybe in the next session. Also, we covered the how I do analyze a malware. What is the first thing that I do? What's the next step? What's the third step? What's the fourth step? How I look at the data and make sense. How I look at the code, and without reading all of that assembly parts, I can make sense of what's doing. Something like this one. I look at here. I see it has this text, the system hardware description, system BIOS that looks like a registry key. If you know registry, it's a place in Windows that saves all the information about all the configuration for the system and different applications. And here he looks at this registry key, which talks about the BIOS, and then he looks at the system manufacturer information, and here he looks at the system product name. So I see that from this, I can assume that he's trying to read this information and know the system product name and the system manufacturer. And I see here he's doing registry. Reg means registry, and this is a Windows command to interact with the registry. So I see here reg open key, reg query value, which reads a specific value. Reg means registry and query value, and here registry query value, and is also querying this value. So, and in here closing this key again. So basically, he's trying to basically read this information, read this, go to this registry key, read the system manufacturer information, read the system product name, and do something with this information. I did analyze that without actually reading the code. The only thing I just looked at the strings and looked at the Windows commands. The string, the Windows command. The string and the Windows command, and that's all of it. And the Windows command. So that's basically it. Brief everything in 2 minutes. Yep, that's what I'm trying to do. So that's basically it. Um, how you can start with a malware. This malware is 229 functions. That's a lot. Well, for me it's not a lot, but for people who are starting, that's a lot.